Hey there, heathens. I'm John, the Godless Engineer.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rod.
Hi, this is Andrew Jasko.
This is Don Quain from the Godless Heathens podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia.
Hi, this is Owen from Rex and Owen and the Skeptical Texan.
Hey, I'm Stephen Woodford of Rationality Rose.
Hi, I'm Thomas Westbrook of Holy Kool-Aid.
Hi, this is Matt Dillahunty.
Hi, this is Britt and Nikki from Unapologetics.
Hi, I'm Donald Trump, and I took a rip. Wait, one second. I gotta put my hands up here.
Just go ahead, Robert. Just go. Hi, I'm Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, and I
took a left at the Valley.
And we... Oh, should I say it too? No,
sure.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from a brand new decade, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I found a woman crying. She lost $200. So I gave her $40 from the $200 I found earlier. That's good karma.
Oh,
no. Joining me as usual is a team that was kidnapped by mimes. They did unspeakable things to them. She'll remind you that if you want your child tender and mild, preheat the oven. Nancy.
Well, sometimes. It depends on the kind of tenderizer you use.
She's no theologian, but she finds it weird that Jesus' middle name is fucking.
Exactly.
And she looked at herself naked in the mirror and thought, I'm going to get thrown out of IKEA in a minute. Kirsten.
Yeah. It's amazing how I got in there in the first place.
You're not welcome to that place anymore, dear.
No, I'm not.
Welcome back, ladies, to a brand new decade.
In a brand new studio.
A brand new studio. Yeah. Yes. A brand new, a bit more cramped studios, but dedicated to it.
We'll make it work.
Yeah.
We'll work out the kinks.
So today we'll be talking to Tracie Harris of the Atheist Experience, or formerly of the Atheist Experience, and Ethan Dodge. But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. That's going to be in the second half of the show. Okay, did you guys hear the story? This is a wonderful Canadian story here. There's this little kid. His name is Jacob. He's 8 years old.
Aww.
He's a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he lives in Quebec, which is odd because, you know, in Quebec usually you'll find either an Nordique fan or Habs fan or something like that. So, anyway, the kid likes the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? So his dad orders a birthday cake for the kid, right? And he buys the cake and They tell him to put a stencil of the Toronto Maple Leaf logo on the cake for little Jacob. And he gets the cake, and he doesn't really check it and brings it home. And when they open the cake, they had a Maple Leaf logo, but of Maple Leaf Foods.
What? Yeah.
Now, for American listeners, if you don't know what Maple Leaf Foods is, it's a company that basically makes cold cuts, bologna, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
What would be the American equivalent? Cargill, maybe?
I'll think of it in a minute.
You know, or Jimmy Dean sausage. Right? It's like for example, you order a cake from James Dean with James Dean the actor, and you get a cake that says the Jimmy Dean sausage on it or something like that. That's the mistake. So. Poor kid, you know, he took it with grace, and the great little story finishes that Maple Leaf Foods, they basically apologized, and they actually offered, even though it was not their fault at all, right? They had nothing to do with the cake,
yeah.
But they offered to also send the kid and his father and his family, I guess, to a game.
Which is so, I mean, it's brilliant marketing.
It's brilliant marketing.
Oh, yeah, like time.
It looks really, really good for them to do something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, staying with Canadian news. If I say the Avro Arrow, you guys know what I'm talking about. Nancy knows what I'm talking about.
I have absolutely no idea what
the Avro Arrow. Nancy, you were on the design team for that plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't admit one way or the other.
That does ring bells.
Yeah.
The Avro Arrow, if you talk to some of the older Canadians, is that legendary Canadian fighter jet that had a delta wing configuration that was built. They had plans. It was a plane that was way ahead of its time, and the plans were scrapped over 60 years ago. Well, the original blueprints have been found and are on display at the University of Saskatchewan.
Oh, that's cool.
In 1959, there's a guy named Ken Barnes. He was a senior draftsman on the project for the Avro Canada, which is why they called it the Avro Arrow. And when the contract or the project was canceled by Prime Minister Diefenbaker back then, and there was a lot of rumors that he had to cave into U.S. pressure from big companies, because all of a sudden the Canadian, this plane is a legend in the mind of most Canadians, because that plane, had it gone into production, might still be in use today. It was that far ahead of its time. Yeah. And it was, the documents, the blueprints were ordered destroyed, but he took them and he hid them in his house.
Well done, sir.
Oh. Yes. So the plane was, at the time, the plane was able to travel twice the speed of sound. Way ahead of its time, and it was the fastest in its class. When the Avro rolled out, just to give you an idea, Sputnik was also launched.
Wow.
The reason at the time that was given for scrapping the Canadian jet, although there's always been conspiracy theories and rumors that the Canadian government caved to U.S. Pressure, because all of a sudden you had like Lockheed Martin and all these big companies that were fighting competition right next door. Yeah. But also the official reason that was given is, at the time, they were starting to develop ballistic missiles. And they thought, what was the point of building fighter jets if you're going to be launching missiles? And they thought the war was heading that way. It's just going to be missiles against missiles. Of course, history proved the opposite. Jets are still being used. Mm-hmm. But at the time they thought, why build a jet that will take so much time to go to a place like Soviet Union back then, while a missile is going to be much, much faster. That was the quote-unquote kind of official reason why the plane was discontinued. This was a completely Canadian effort. It was Canadian-built. The engines were Canadian-built. Everything was called a Mohawk engine. And like I said, the plane was way, way, way ahead of its time. And it's still a very sore spot for a lot of Canadians who felt that the government would just start caving into U.S. interests.
It's a good thing they saved the blueprints. It's amazing that they weren't archived someplace. But
well, yeah, exactly. Why would you archive something like that? Why would you order that destroyed is beyond me. But, you know.
That's why there's conspiracy theories.
This falls exactly into the same category of saying, you know, the conspiracy theory you hear of, oh, this guy built this car that was run entirely by water and then was bought up by GM and then also the car disappeared. That falls into the same kind of category. There's probably a kernel of truth in there somewhere. How much of it, we'll never know. We'll never know.
But anyway, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice to see that these blueprints are still in existence. And of course, we've got to talk about the news that's been going all over the place for probably a good week now. The Iranian crisis and the U.S. Okay, who wants to start on this?
I want to end it. It's already started. If you can find a way to end it with, everyone surviving, that would be great.
Okay, so unless you've been living on the moon in a cave with your fingers in your ears, essentially the U.S. moved to kill a General Soleimani, and they basically ambushed him and kind of drone strike and kill the guy. Iran basically warned the U.S. that they would and announced some retaliations, and they threw some rockets at some military bases in the U.S. And apparently there was a rumor, hasn't quite been confirmed yet, that apparently they decided to miss the bases on purpose. Just to show basically the Americans, we're going to fight you if we have to.
Like, we have the power.
Power.
These are warning shots.
Yeah. And in the meantime, of course, Trump decided to back down his stupid, rash decision. And Iran also announced at the same time they were abandoning the nuclear treaty that, the U.S. has already moved out of. And now the rest of Europe was trying to keep Iran there, and they were, until the U.S. basically pulled that bonehead move. And of course, in the meantime, also there's a commercial flight PS752 that was shot down. Apparently, as we say this, Iran apparently admitted it was a mistake. They were not supposed to shoot that down. They just thought the plane was like an American fighter jet or something like that, and it was shot down by mistake. Now, I'm hearing a lot from conservative talk radio that, they think the Iranians are full of shit and they shot that plane on purpose. Frankly, I don't think so. What would be the advantage of shooting, a simple civilian jet down? It's not something you do when you even go to war. So I think these conservatives have to really, really rethink.
Well, and that's the shit thing about war, is that casualties happen.
Yeah,
civilian casualties happen.
They do. There was.
It's ironic that the Iranians were in a Ukrainian plane with all of the news swirling around
the Ukraine as well.
It brings, unfortunately, it brings together, the war in the Middle East, what's happening in Ukraine with Trump, and of course the impeachment. Everything is swirling, and it's so hard to keep up with all the horrific news that comes out every single day. It's scary. It's very scary.
Yeah, exactly.
And self-imposed by who.
Yeah, and of course, right now this is still a volatile situation as we say this, as we speak about this, and I don't know what the hell Mango Mussolini was thinking of doing something like that. And
you know exactly what he was thinking. I don't want all this news of the impeachment, to spoil the fact that I'm such a great leader. I can solve the Middle East problem, and the way to do that is to take out Soleimani. Even though no one else has done it because they realized that conflagration was going to follow.
Yeah, but I mean, there's certainly a valid hypothesis, and that he would, and I wouldn't put it past somebody like Trump to actually try something like that. Just to get the press off his back.
Well, didn't it just come out that he did say that one of the reasons that he did this was to get some support from the GOP?
Oh, really?
In the Senate? Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's the latest.
That's the latest, huh?
They caught, yeah. Whether that's accurate, but that was the latest, that he did, admit that was one of the reasons that fueled his decision.
And of course, to our American audience, guys, come on. 2020 is around the corner. You have to vote this idiot out of there. How much damage is he going to do to your country before, you guys will be fixing this for another 20 years. Just the problems he's caused in the last 3 years, at the very least. And of course, right now, Trump, as we speak also, he's asking NATO and NATO members for help with Iran, to try to reel Iran in. And you know what? After all these 3 years that he's been bashing all his allies, including Canada, including the UK, including France, including Germany, he's been bashing, basically all turning around and saying, fuck you, screw you, bud. You're on your own on this. When you don't come crawling to us, we've been trying to keep Iran on the right side, and you know what? For the most part, it was working. Iran didn't go rogue like North Korea, and they were collaborating with the nuclear treaty. No. Trump decided to come in and wave his big dick around like an idiot, and now all of a sudden he's bashing everybody, and now he's coming to all these nations, allies or former allies anyway, saying, "Oh, come on, you guys got to help us with Iran." I don't think so, bud. I don't think so. This is your bed. You lay in it. And unfortunately, the American public and the American GIs might have to pay for his stupidity.
Yeah.
This is what bothers me. Yeah.
Will.
I mean, it's already that shot that plane that was shot down. There was like 63 Canadians.
Yes, there was.
Yeah. So there's this wonderful little cartoon. This morning I saw a political cartoon where you have like the Ayatollah with a gun, and you got Trump facing him with a gun, and there's a dead Canadian in between the two of them, and they both shot, but the Canadian is the guy, the one that got the bullet, and that really speaks loudly. Mm-hmm. God damn! I hope the Americans, wake up in 2020 and just remove this stain of humanity. I can't believe this guy. We could do an entire podcast just on Trump.
I just find myself really wondering what it's going to take for the Republicans in the Senate to do the right thing, because at this point everything is on their shoulders.
Oh yeah.
Whether or not they're going to acquit him and take the easy way out for what they think are their own careers, or they're going to take the moral high ground and say this guy is nuts, he needs to be out, and we'll deal with the fallout after we've done the right thing.
They're not going to take the moral high ground. Trump will lose his support once he realizes that their job's on the line. That's what's going to happen. Once the voters come out and basically said, you know what, we're kicking you out because you're an idiot supporting Trump, that's when they're going to lose. Trump is going to lose all his support, because it's their job. That's all they care about. As long as they can keep their job and make the money, that's all they care about. Trump will then lose all his support. He will not have that loyalty there. But when is that going to happen? Soon, I hope. Let's see. And it kind of reminds me of that thing where they say, for evil to triumph, it just takes good men to do nothing. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening. All right. Anyway, something a bit more cheerful. We have some
Mail Talk.
I love Blue's Clues.
Yeah.
Well, this is just a little one from our friend Freethinker215 and Nelson Haha Muntz. Good evening, Gress. Best of LETV 2019 compilation show. You did a fine job summarizing each clip as it was played. Also, a good job on finding the best part of each individual episode to use. I thought it was hilarious when you messed up and said Matt Dillonty was the host of The Thinking Atheist. Watch out, Seth Andrews. Thanks for the shout out. And that's from our friend Freethinker215. So, there we go.
You rock.
Thank you so much for that, Freethinker215. Okay, let's move on there. So now what do
thank
we
you
got?
for listening to that program and letting us know how you feel. We love your mail and look forward to it. Every time you send us something, we do, yay!
It makes us feel loved.
Yeah.
Okay. My dear Nancy, you got a top 10 for us?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. A lot of the news, well, the news in the last week or so has been looking back to the top 10 of what went on in the previous decade. So, keeping with that theme, let's see how you guys think these 10 major events of the 2010 really were major events, or whether you would have picked some others. These come from history.com, and there's no particular ranking. They're just in different categories. So one of the major events, according to history.com, in the 2010s to the 2020 was Occupy Wall Street. You think that was a newsworthy?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just slightly.
Yeah, 1,000 people marched through the streets of New York Financial District in September 2011 under Occupy Wall Street banner. And they condemned the income equality, the influence of money in politics, and called for an overhaul of what they saw as a failing financial system. So in the past 10 years, how have they done?
I don't know how that specifically is done, but it's really funny hearing with the current protest culture that America has right now, where they get hundreds of thousands of people, hearing this, there was 1,000 people. It's it's so small.
Yeah.
I think the problem with Occupy Wall Street is I think the intentions were good. I think they started doing it good, but then they didn't take it a step further. They didn't do. They
didn't
Wall
eat
Street.
the rich.
Yeah, Occupy Wall Street should have been the other side of the medal to the Tea Party. Right? And that's what it should have been. It should have been kind of almost like the crazies, because at some point you kind of need that. You need the crazies to come out, because at some point, you're being peaceful, but when how do I put this? When you're being too peaceful at some point, you just discard it to the side, not taken seriously. And I think this is what happened at the end at Occupy. If they had ramped up the pressure, I think they would have gone further.
Yeah, well, it's interesting if you look at that, and then you look at Bernie Sanders in 2016. You can see how the protesting and the bringing out of the young people and income equality sort of led the way, to the way the young people turned out more in the 2016, and how I think they're much more motivated, to get out and express their opinions, and to get down and actually write to their senators and so forth.
I'm gonna win you on this, Nancy.
Okay.
You and I were disagreeing about who the next candidate for the Democrats are.
Okay.
Right now, would you agree with me that Sanders got the best chance there?
Yeah. I'm not saying. Okay. Moving right on. The next one is Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was a powerful. It didn't start out powerfully, but that again, that was in 2013. And that started out by 3 black female activists using social media, Black Lives Matter, in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman. That's right, who shot and killed Trayvon Martin. Yeah. So that's how that started. And they've become much more credible and much more powerful. So that is I think that is an important event, and they're still going, and they're still a growing. They have a growing role in social media. Number 3. the 2016 presidential. These are more U.S.
Oh, of course.
centric.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that the 2016 was a
world event.
That was a world event. It was world changing, wasn't it?
Yeah, just fucking slightly.
I think the 2016 election had the unfortunate effect of showing us how many people within our ranks actually are full of hatred and contempt, and it's like, that's disgusting. Yeah, I wasn't thinking it was that bad.
Now who to not talk to anymore because they're gross.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's the right thing to do.
I mean, this whole great Make America Great Again, which really masked the widespread discontent among white working class voters and the Washington establishment, undocumented immigrants, everything has changed. The world is upside down since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're living in the worst timeline.
Moving out of the U.S. and into the world a little bit. Brexit.
Gross.
Starting in 2016.
People are stupid.
Yeah.
People are just really stupid.
Yeah. How do you think that's going to turn out?
Stupidly.
I think they're going to come to a point where they're going to have to completely ignore that referendum and basically say it's not doable, or have to redo a referendum.
I think what's going to happen is a hard Brexit, and it's just going to collapse their economy, and everyone's going to die.
I don't. I mean, even the staunchest conservative, once the numbers are in front of them, they're not going to be able to justify doing a hard Brexit.
Well, yeah, because everyone will die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Number
anyway,
5, the impeachment.
Oh, yeah.
Not much more we can say about that. Yeah. It's still going. We don't know how it's going to turn out at this point, but that's another earth shaker to see what's going to happen.
Now, I don't know much about the impeachment process. I know that they have to bring it in front of the Senate, and basically the senators are basically saying, we'll vote whichever way Trump tells us to. Yeah, shows how impartial you are. But can't they... I wonder if, what's her name, Nancy Pelosi? Can't she not hold on to this?
That's literally what she's doing.
No, but I mean, hold on to it to the election and just have it like a dark cloud over Trump's head all the time.
Literally can.
If she can't do that, I think that's what I would do.
Because right now they can still be in the House. They're still...
Because if they bring it in front of the Senate, and the Senate basically decides to go vote the same way as Trump is going to say exonerated.
Of course.
He's going to say that, right? And of course his followers are going to fall for that.
Because they're stupid.
Well, or misinformed.
Stupid.
In politics, there's no telling whether or not, she's good at timing. She really is. Yeah. She'll pick the opportune moment to do it, and she...
But I mean, if they hold on to it and wait to elect a Senate that's different from the one they currently have, all of a sudden you might have the whole thing go for real. Right? We'll see.
We'll see what happens. Number 6, the Haiti earthquake. That's kind of gotten buried with the other news, but it was the deadliest natural disaster of the decade. It was in 2010, and it was a magnitude 7.0 earthquake in the West Indian island of Hispaniola in the afternoon of January 12th. So we're almost on the anniversary of that one. They had a dozen powerful aftershocks, and it killed an estimated 200,000 to 250,000 people and affected more than 3 million. And we barely talk about it.
Yeah,
it feels like forever ago.
And if you compare it to the 2004 tsunami that killed as many people, you're right. We barely talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, number 7 are the hurricanes.
There were less white people that died.
And the hurricanes, there were several massive hurricanes. We seem to remember the hurricanes more than we do the Haiti earthquake. But the hurricanes and tropical storms hit in 2010, starting in 2012 with Sandy. And that unleashed record-setting gales and storm surges in the Northeast. And it killed more than 230 people, and
that's the one that flooded
billion.
That's the one that flooded New York, right?
Yeah.
And then they had the Sandy Hook thing.
Sandy Hook was the shooting.
That was the shooting. Yeah, sorry.
But Sandy was the hurricane off of New Jersey and off the eastern coast. 2017, there were 3 major hurricanes.
Yeah.
Harvey, Irma, and Maria. They struck Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico. You never forget the Puerto Rico one because
they still haven't recovered from that.
How they were treated.
They also just had an earthquake, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
They just had an earthquake on top of that. Jesus, kick a guy window down, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if people still don't have power.
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly.
Pretty likely.
Yeah. So, scientists have linked the increasing intensity, if not frequency, to climate change. Which
Shocker.
Yeah. Number 8, terrorist attacks. During the second decade following 9/11, terrorism continued around the world. There were major attacks: the Boston Marathon, Paris, London Bridge, Barcelona, Orlando, Florida, the Walmart in El Paso, and U.S. Special Ops took down 2 major leaders of the Islamic terrorism, Osama bin Laden and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. But it's still prevalent. I don't see that it's going to stop, or I think it's going to increase. Anybody else believe it's going to increase? Yeah.
I think you were getting more white dudes.
Yeah.
Shooting places up.
Yeah, we are. Well, that's number 9, which is mass shootings.
Oh.
Which is separate from the domestic terror.
Yeah.
They're separating the mass shootings from.
Why?
Because the mass shootings are more domestic. They're looking at the terrorist attacks as being mostly out of the country.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and the mass shootings, which just keep more horrifying episodes, one after another. Horrible. There goes Sandy Hook in Connecticut, Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida, and dozens of others almost every other week, it seems.
Right. Yeah, and I think the sad part between the mass shootings and the terrorist attacks is there's enough of them to separate them.
Yeah.
Greatly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awful. Number 10.
And just so America knows.
Yes.
School shootings is your thing. That's a your thing.
Yeah.
No one else gets that.
No.
That's an American thing.
Yeah.
It's very much a you problem.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Work your shit out, guys.
Yeah. So number 10, on sort of a high note, advances in LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
A decade saw key advances around the world, which is a good thing, with the legalization of same-sex marriage in 18 countries, including Argentina, France, Great Britain, Australia, Ireland, Germany, and the U.S. via the Supreme Court, of course. Meanwhile, anti-gay laws passed in Russia and China were not so good, and there's an ongoing battle still in the U.S. over laws preventing transgender people from using bathrooms matching their gender identity. But generally, it's more of a positive. So those are the 10. And there are some honorable mentions with the new generation of British royals, with the Prince George and Princess Charlotte, and also Prince Harry and what's her name? Meghan. Yeah, and the Me Too movement. The Chicago Cubs won the World Series, and the rise of Simone Biles, the talented gymnast who won 4 gold medals. Those are sort of honorable mentions.
I would totally put the Me Too movement above the Wall Street, whatever that was.
Wall Street.
The march by 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? Why isn't the Me Too movement above that? That's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're both in their own way, Yeah,
but the Me Too movement is way more pivotally changing of the whole Western society. Yeah. And not even just Western society, the world. Because you get people in China. There's the Me Too movement's there too.
Yeah, they put Me Too movement down as number 13 rather than up in the top 10. But the Me Too movement, it exploded. And finally, women are getting the
$50 as a man
credibility that they deserve. Anyway, anybody have
it's like I'm putting this way down here.
Yeah, anybody have anything to add to?
I stopped being religious. That was good.
That should have been on the list. There we go.
Really?
My own personal. Yeah. It's only been since 2014.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
No, Jesus has nothing to do with that.
And here you are.
And here you are now. You're an atheist podcast heathen. Can't believe it. All right. Well, thank you so much, my dear Nancy. That was great. If you got anything else you guys thought we should have added, send an email to Nancy. No, email us at leftatvalley@outlook.com. Care of Nancy, and make sure you bribe her as well. Perfect.
Can you tell we've been off for a couple weeks?
Yeah.
We're off for a game, aren't we? Not that we ever had a game, but anyway.
We had a game all our own. We just got to find it again.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, my dear. You have another brilliant moment for us?
I do.
Brought to you by religion.
So, Riley Harris, a student at the University of Southern Maine, had a straightforward assignment for his art class. Take a book and repurpose it into something else.
Oh God, tell me he used the Bible.
Of course. This is another brilliant moment after all.
Yeah. There we go.
So, he took a Bible, made the pages look like flames, and added satanic images to it. He called it Unholy Bible, Very Revised Standard Edition.
Very revised?
What grade was this, Kirsten?
I hope he's like grade 5 or something.
University.
University.
This is at a university.
Oh, okay, all right.
I love that guy.
Okay.
Oh, he's amazing.
I love that guy. We should get him on the show.
Yeah. If you're listening, you're our next guest.
Right? Is it offensive? You'll find far more offensive things inside that book, but art is subjective. And that's the point. Harris had his own reasons for what he did, and none of them have to do with blasphemy.
I'll be kind of curious to see what kind of a grade he got on that project.
I would too.
Mm-hmm. I hope he got an A.
I was thinking a lot about questioning authority in general, said Harris, a sophomore studying art and entrepreneurship. People question different types of authority, but for some reason, religious authority seems too taboo for the question.
Exactly.
So I thought I would give it a shot. And to you, I say, well done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that, right? I mean, you know you're oppressed when you cannot question an authority of any kind. That's when you realize you're in trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the Jeebus has been giving a pass like that for way too long. Way too long.
Oh, yes. And apparently another student's dad had a problem with that.
Amazing.
After the piece by Riley was displayed outside a classroom, one young girl who was part of a church gathering at the Wish Camper Center noticed the piece, prompting her father, Charlie Flynn, to slam the display, asserting, "This is someone's sacred text being desecrated, destroyed, and displayed in a public place."
You know what? The recipe for Orville Redenbacher popcorn is somebody's sacred text too. Who cares?
I couldn't help but feel no one's sacred text should be treated that way. I think it's very inappropriate.
Yeah. This is the same guy that's gonna, when people say you can't build there, it's a native first land, sacred land, he's gonna say, well, who cares? Bulldoze the place and build them all there, right? This is the same kind of guy.
It gets better.
His sacred text is bad, but you know.
This gets better. If I saw a Quran with pig blood on it, I would certainly call someone, or a Torah with unclean foods on it. This is a Bible with Satan's image put over Jesus' image, and around Christmas time. But when that's happened, I don't understand why that would be viewed as an institution of higher learning. So it's like, apparently he's not okay if that was to happen to other religious texts, but I'm curious to see if that's actually the case.
Yeah,
I was wondering.
I feel like maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, if the Quran was treated the same way, would there have been an outcry? I mean, probably by
somebody else.
Yes. Not by him, yeah.
Not by him.
No.
But yeah, so I say bravo to that student.
Yeah, bravo indeed. Bravo indeed. That's
right.
all for. Perfect.
So, moving on, as we know, there's a Christian substitute for just about everything in the secular world. There is also Christian health insurance.
Oh, yes, God, no.
Oh, yeah, we covered that a couple years ago.
Only the most devout believers can buy into. And just like those other Christian alternatives, it's much worse than the original.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sharing this because the way they do it pisses me off. The way groups like Samaritan Ministries and Liberty Health Share work is that everyone in the system pays a specific amount into the insurance pool every month, but they don't send it to the providers. The company tells them where to send their money and how much to send. If you need something covered yourself, you ask the provider to send your name to others in the pool. That's not really that different from other insurance. Except it's not regulated. And the providers can cut you off at any time if you're too expensive to cover. If you did something they deem immoral, you won't get any money at all. So good luck getting contraception.
Yeah.
Can't be a same-sex couple. Like, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything's great until the moment you need them the most. And that's where it gets mad. Because you imagine if you're in a spot where you're just diagnosed with something and you're obviously dealing with a lot of stress, and you're like, oh, well, at least I had this one thing. At least my medication or whatever for this thing is going to be covered. Nope.
I don't think so.
No.
You did something very immoral. You sinned, and that's reason to stop payment.
Yeah.
It goes to show that they only worship money. That's the true worship, the true God.
Yeah, and it's like, guys...
There are a couple of pretty big providers, Christian providers, though, in the field. I think the reason that, if I can remember when we covered that a couple of years ago, the reason it was springing up was because if people didn't get insurance on the Obama plan, they were penalized, they were taxed, and so this was a way of avoiding their being penalized, and it qualified under the insurance. So that was why it sprung up.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have Ethan Dodge and Tracie Harris. So stay with us.
What's up, heathens? I'm the Godless Engineer, and it would be great if you could join me on my YouTube channel. Over there, we post videos every day. On Mondays, we normally post a response video of some kind. Tuesdays, we post our daily Bible podcast that I record with KC. Wednesdays, we read comments. Thursdays and Fridays is conspiracy theory and flat earth stuff. And we have a new segment that runs Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays that is Today I Learned from KC.
Hi, y'all.
So please join us over on the YouTube channel Godless Engineer, where we always stand up and use our voice.
Attention, fellow Atheist podcast listeners.
We are the Godless Heathens Podcast.
Here's the details with no fine print. You got new episodes available every other Sunday.
Sunday! There's three of us, just like the Holy Trinity.
I'm Don.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jerry.
Coming to you from a spare bedroom in exurban Atlanta,
where we'll examine the crossroads of politics and religion, but from the secular perspective.
Sometimes we get heavy, sometimes we get deep.
And no one is above reproach or mockery, especially each other.
It's more of what you want and less of what you don't.
So open your hearts and minds to the Godless Heathens in your podcast rotation.
And you just might learn something too.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it?
I don't know where the lights are taking us, but something in the night is dangerous, and nothing's holding back the two of us.
All right, well, joining us online is Ethan Dodge. He's the founder of Truth and Transparency, and joining us, of course, is the lovely Tracie Harris, co-host of the Atheist Experience. She's smart, she's brilliant, and she's beautiful, and Ethan's pretty good looking too. They are snappy dressers and snazzy dancers. Guys, welcome. Left of the Valley.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. That's by far the most, I think that's my favorite intro I've ever had, so thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Everybody on the show turns out to be a snappy dresser and snazzy dancer at some point. I guess
my wife makes fun of me because for me wearing jeans is dressing up. So thank you.
He put on pants today.
Oh, that's one more than we have. We don't have any pants.
I'm usually
just for the audio.
Yeah, just for the audio.
Well,
exactly.
We do our show naked, so jeans dress up for us.
You know how they say you need to picture people naked when you're doing a speech. That's why we do it naked all the time. So that's why.
I would expect nothing less from an atheist podcast. So.
Good one. All right. So maybe for our audience that might not be familiar with Ethan and Tracie, maybe you guys would be so kind to give us a quick bio of each one of you. Let's start with Ethan.
Yeah, so my name is Ethan Gregory Dodge. I was born and raised Mormon. Left the Mormon church about 4 years ago, I think. It seems like it was so long ago, but really it's not that long ago. But anyway, and since then I co-founded a website called Mormon Leaks with Ryan McKnight. And we had some success. The site was exactly what it sounds like. We were putting out leaks of confidential information from the Mormon Church, and we were able to expose some corruption there, and we actually expanded to a website called Faith Leaks, and we were doing the same thing, expose some corruption within the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then in 2019, about a year ago, we ditched both those names, Mormon Leaks and Faith Leaks, in favor of the Truth and Transparency Foundation, which was always the name of our nonprofit organization that accepted tax-deductible donations on behalf of those two projects. But the difference now is rather than just putting documents out there and acting as sources for other journalists, we have now become the journalists ourselves, and we are an investigative nonprofit newsroom dedicated to promoting transparency within religious institutions.
Fantastic. And Tracie?
Yeah, so I was mainly known in the atheist community for my role with the Atheist Community of Austin, for which I served as a board director and also officer, and hosted and co-hosted a few of the shows over there, Atheist Experience and also Godless Bitches. And that's where I actually came across Ethan. He was invited on as a guest and talked to us about one of the lawsuits that they were involved in, where one of the groups they were trying to expose was suing them to try and keep the documents from being publicized. And so Ethan was kind of going through this whole story about the intricacies of this lawsuit, which ended up, it could have been a very dry story listening to the legalese of, these things, but it was actually super interesting for me to hear all of the sort of clever tricks and twists that the religious group was using to try and squelch this document from coming out, get this information from coming out, like doing everything it could and pulling out all the stops to try and think of any excuse to stop, almost like someone's tax returns were going to be released and they would do anything to stop them, right? Just, and so I found it super interesting. And I thought that the project sounded very interesting, and I thought Ethan did a really good job of explaining what was happening, and also a really good job of understanding what they had to do in order to kind of counter all of these weird, blocks that were being put up. And I didn't really think that much about it afterwards until Ethan got in touch with me again and said they were starting this push to try and go a little bigger with this thing and do a little bit more with it. And I was immediately interested. Obviously, it's a very cool effort, and it's something that I think has a lot of value, has a lot of potential, and I would like to see them succeed. And that's kind of why we're promoting as hard as we are right now. It's why I reached out to you and said, hey, would you help us with this? Because we really need to get the word out. We need to get the word out insofar as promoting donations, but also exposure. If people would like to go and visit the truthandtransparency.org website and just see what they've got going on there. If you find it interesting, if you think it's good work, if you think it's worth supporting, feel free to donate. If you don't have money to donate, but you still think it's worth supporting, feel free to, share it out with people. I definitely we appreciate all of the help that we can get, and we really appreciate you having us on today to talk about it.
Well, you might regret that in a few minutes. No, we'll certainly do all we can do, and of course, you guys will be sending us the links that we'll put in the notes of the show for the audience to follow as well. Let me play devil's advocate here for half a second. And why is it that you two are against capitalism? I mean, why are you bashing these poor churches that are not making any money?
Oh God.
No, I'm kidding. Of course.
On that note, I'd like to. I'm sure you saw the Washington Post break a story that supposedly the Mormon Church is sitting on over $100 billion in the U.S. stock market.
I did.
And that story was extremely interesting, and actually we kind of got scooped on it. We were working on that exact same story. However, we in 2018 we released public documentation that definitively tied $32 billion to the Mormon Church in the U.S. stock market, whereas this report from the Washington Post is solely relying on the word of a whistleblower, which isn't a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. There's just not nearly as much substantiated documentation as we have provided in our $32 billion leak. And but anyway, that's why I said that you're uninformed, because these churches are making a shit ton of money. The Mormon Church especially has a very interesting history. It's often said that they are a religion that dabbles in business, but in all reality, they are more like a business that dabbles in religion.
No, I absolutely agree. Yeah. I think you guys are absolutely right. There was an interesting fact that came out several years ago saying that according to the WHO, it would cost between $30 and $50 billion a year to eradicate hunger worldwide. And the same stat basically shows that in the U.S. it's close between $70 and $80 billion a year that is sent to churches that basically disappears in church records. When you hear a number like that, and knowing that the U.S. is 5% of the world population, that's an astounding number.
Oh yeah.
It basically shows that the reason poverty exists today is not because we can't eradicate it; it's because we don't want to.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
I would just like to say, I mean, to me, that's one of the more egregious things here, right? It's just like part of the reason for the tax deductible. I mean, for the tax breaks for these churches and religious institutions is the assumption that they're doing public good. Mm-hmm. And so when they are very, I guess, groups that are isolated, like the Mormon Church, where you have a group where it's sort of more of an in-group thing. Like the churches where I used to attend, we didn't do any public service. We were very, very insular. It was all about the people that attended the church. We didn't do outreach. We didn't do homeless work. We didn't do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And yet whatever money was coming in is tax deductible because of service to the community that we weren't really doing. And I feel like when these churches have these massive amounts of money like this, and you look at the public good that could be happening and the way that they're, getting these tax breaks for all of this money because of the good they're supposed to be doing, and really it's just a pile of money sitting and making them more money. They could be doing so much good with this, and they are supposed to be doing so much good with this, is, I think, the thing that's really bothersome to me.
Well, how did they explain that pile of cash that they're sitting on that obviously is adding to their wealth but isn't going anywhere? How do they explain?
It's because it's guarded by a dragon.
Yeah.
And you see the Lord of the Rings there, Smaug is a dragon that's sitting on a big pile at the Vatican.
Gotcha.
And at the Mormon Church as well.
Yeah, it was the Mormon Church money.
Oh, yeah, of course, sorry. They have another dragon, too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But did they explain why they're sitting on it rather than it's going to any public good or whatever it is? Well, I'm going to stop talking.
I mean, have they even admitted to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. They came out with a press statement the next day, recognizing, and essentially they were saying that they do invest in the stock market. They didn't recognize and admit to that. Yes, we have that much money in the stock market. However, they basically said we have the right to reserve the money for reserves for the future as a rainy day fund, right? Which $100 billion is quite the rainy day fund.
It's quite rainy, yeah. It's
nuclear weapons.
To be fair, well, I don't know if this is to be fair, but the Washington Post article wasn't that far off when it said that they're, I think they used the word hoarding or something like that for the second coming of Christ, right? Because they very much believe in Armageddon and that there are times are going to get really, really bad right before Jesus comes back, right? And so that's just Mormon and Christian doctrine in general. And that's the church has not recognized that is exactly why they have it. However, if you ask any Mormon on the streets, that's likely how they're going to rebuttal your
Yeah, and I guess
argument.
For me, again, though, it's just this question of, do we want to consider that public good? Like, we're going to protect people during Armageddon? I mean, is that really why we're giving tax breaks? To help people after the rapture?
What is money going to do during Armageddon? The market would crash and the money be worthless. What would
Think
money
of all the
do?
good we will be doing.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like similar to climate change, right? Like all these Christians are saying, well, we don't need to worry about climate change because Jesus is going to come before the world blows up, right? Not that the world's going to, what I mean. But it's effectively like they're killing all of us, right? I mean, that's a hyperbole. I recognize what I just said, but it's very similar to that situation. They're hoarding all this money, saying that they're doing public good, which, by the way, the Mormon Church has only ever admitted to doing about $40 million of humanitarian aid over the course of 10 years, where they're sitting on $100 billion.
Right. I mean,
Is there any evidence that the leadership is using that for their own benefit in any way?
So the $100 billion that was disclosed is solely in the stock market. It does not, according to the whistleblower, right? It does not include their real estate, which is probably, I mean, at least in the U.S. alone, they are the single largest landowner in the state of Florida, right? And they own property all over the world. They have over 160 temples, which are at least $10 to $50 million a piece, if not more, right? And as far as the Mormon leaders the Mormon leaders are compensated very, very nicely. In fact, we were the first organization to publish anything that concretely pointed to this fact. They'd always had this saying that they had no paid clergy, and I even taught this on my mission. I served a Mormon mission in Guatemala, and that I would tell people, no, we don't have any paid clergy. They lived a good life, and most of the Mormon leaders, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles is what they're called. They were very successful businessmen in their careers, right? And so the belief generally was that they were very successful and that they were living off their money that they saved for retirement. When in reality, we released a memo that was saying that they get paid $125,000 a year. So, and that's in Utah. Right, which is you're sitting pretty pretty there in Utah on $125,000 a year, and that was in 2014, so it's likely a little bit higher now.
Put that in Canadian money, it's like $3,000 a paycheck or something.
I mean, that's great. Religion on one hand, lying about your money on the other sounds pretty normal to me. Right?
But you guys are on the forefront of this battle. When you talk to the average theist or the average believer, why is it you think they don't grasp the numbers on this? It's pretty black and white, and it's pretty, obvious. How come the average theist? What do you think? Why don't they understand this?
I mean, I know that this is going to be, Ethan's wheelhouse, but I just want to say in some of the interviews that I've been in with Ryan, who is the co-founder, he's talked about how some of the tips and some of the support that they receive actually comes from believers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, so we don't know 100%. My job at the Truth and Transparency Foundation, what I do in my day job is I'm a cybersecurity professional. And so what I bring to the table for this foundation is it is my job to protect our sources so that we only know who they are if they go out of their way to tell us who they are, right? And so sometimes we know, sometimes we do not know. And I mean, it's perfectly reasonable to say that at least some of our sources have been members.
Okay, just to be clear, I wasn't necessarily saying your sources. He was just saying that a lot of support that you get, like people who pay attention to your site and say that they like the work that you're doing, are in these religions where they believe that their religion should be policed.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be abusing, funds and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people, and I loop myself in here because if you Google me online, you'll see that I also consider myself an atheist. But I think the secular community tends to just lump all theists in one basket sometimes, when really, especially within Mormonism, there is quite the spectrum of belief, right? I have many, many, many believing friends who 100% support us. They are the minority, but there is quite the spectrum there in terms of belief, and those that are kind of more towards the, I don't know, have a better bullshit than others tend to support us. Yeah,
I think you could probably think of it in terms of, when we saw all of the child molestation coming out of the Catholic Church and how some Catholics left the church and some of them recognized the problem. They stayed in the church, but they still wanted the church to be held accountable.
Exactly.
Other people defended the church, but you had this range and this spectrum of Catholics and how they chose to address it. But there were definitely Catholics who remained in the church who still felt that the church should be held to account.
Wow.
Exactly.
Now, Ethan, you said you were a cybersecurity expert?
Professional, not necessarily an expert.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me just.
He gets paid for it, but he may not know what he's doing.
Let me just.
No, he's very. I'm sure he's great at what he does.
Let me just make a note here.
The thing is, let me preface why I don't like the word expert. Is just software and computers and systems are so intricate that it is very hard to say that and cybersecurity is just such a broad field that I don't feel comfortable saying I'm an expert. Maybe little niches within that field, yes, but not the whole field in general.
I'm just making a note for myself here. Delete porn. Okay, perfect. Now,
no cookies.
Do you guys feel that what we're seeing there is? It seems to me like very almost symptomatic of the same kind of thing we see in politics in the U.S. The average Joe out there that is for a victim, I guess, but still will go and defend people that are taking advantage of him or her. Do you think that this is just an American phenomenon, or do you think this is a worldwide thing?
I know it's not just in the U.S. because I have friends in other countries where they're observing the same thing. So I know it isn't just happening here, where people vote against their own best interests in some cases. I think there's something, my personal opinion is that there's something weird going on, and that's just my many years on the planet of seeing political cycles. I've never seen anything quite like this during my lifetime in the U.S. So.
Yeah, I would agree, and as Tracie said, what's happening in the U.S. now isn't unique to the U.S. and but I do agree with your drawing that parallel though between religion and politics, that people often they defend the religion that is may or may not be oppressing them, and we see this very same thing in politics all over the world.
I've got, as a Canadian, sometimes I get a bit frustrated with what goes on in the States because as a Canadian, we find a lot of Americans are very America-centric. They know what goes on in the U.S. They don't know anything else about what goes on outside the U.S. And for example, here in Canada, the city of Montreal, which is one of our biggest cities, has started taxing churches. Now, they don't tax the church itself. The place of worship is tax-free, but the property around where the little house where the priest lives and all that becomes taxable. And yet I don't see this idea taking root in the States. It's almost like they're blind to this idea. Another thing that happened, too, is that in the same province, in Quebec, they decide to essentially enforce secularism for the employees of the state. In other words, as an employee of the government, during work hours, you can do that whatever you want when you're free, but during the work hours, you're not allowed to wear your little yakama or your cross or your Star of David or your hijab or whatever. And yet I'm seeing a backlash against this kind of thinking. So what do you guys think needs to happen? I mean, you guys are reporting on it, but what does the government or the population in the U.S. need to do to stop this problem? What do you think needs to happen? That's a big question.
How much time you got?
I mean, I don't know about in Canada if it's there, but there's a really good documentary on Netflix called The Family, where they talk a little bit about the influence of Christian dominionism and conservatism in our political system and how integrated it has become. There's another documentary that I think can be found probably online. So I'm sure there's a way to get a hold of it. It's called The Revisionaries. And it was dealing with actually a specific situation here in Texas with our school board and how Christian conservatives infiltrated the school board, dominionists again, to control our school curriculums around science and social studies and history. So they basically owned the narrative, downplaying things like slavery and Hispanic contributions, playing down Thomas Jefferson and other like founding fathers who were maybe not super religious and who advocated for separation. They kind of made them a little less prominent in the books and played up a little bit more the religious angle and certain statements or documents that might be more promoting of religious history in the U.S. And they also added people like, Calvinistic principles and how they shaped our history, right? And kind of in my head, I'm thinking I'm fine with talking about how Calvin has influenced the country and it should be taught as a negative, right? It really did some bad things to our thinking about society and how it should work. But they very much are infiltrating the government very purposefully with an agenda. And I think what we're seeing now is some very coordinated efforts that are coming to a more public light. And I think the question is just going to be whether people in 2020 here in the U.S. decide that that is the way they want to go with this or not. I mean, it's a real tipping point now. I think it's very pivotal to say. We knew for a long time that there was a lot of backlash, like religion had been trending down, right? Religiosity and association with religious institutions was on the decline.
Absolutely.
And so they've known for a while that they're on the ropes here. And we're seeing a lot of voting restrictions that are happening, right, that are beneficial to conservative politicians. We're seeing gerrymandering and things like that are happening. So they are aware that they need leverage in order to succeed, that they won't get just from an open vote. And they're kind of making sure that that happens, that they have that. And now that they've kind of packed the courts here, right? So we have this three-pronged government that is the Congress, the U.S., and the justice system. And they have packed the courts. And I think what I'm interested in and what I think may happen is that in the past, during my lifetime, the courts have been sort of a check on conservative social overreach, right? So when they went after individual rights or freedoms, the courts would sort of cut that off at the knees. Not always, but often. And now I'm concerned that what we're going to see is that, one, I'm worried that we will see a re-election of a conservative president. And number two, I think I'm concerned about the fact that even if we can do something about the Senate, we now have a court system that we're going to have to deal with that is going to be finding in ways that we're not used to. So something goes to court and we say, oh, that will never be upheld because it never has been upheld. And suddenly I think we are now in danger of maybe seeing that thing upheld, seeing these laws that we're used to saying that can't happen, being told that it can. Well, that's the thing that I'm afraid of mostly.
Yeah, and you should be afraid, and everyone should be afraid because it's not jurists who are being put on the courts for the appellate courts or for federal courts, district courts. What's happening, as you well know, is Mitch McConnell's agenda is to get anybody on there who, if not a real conservative and someone who has the training, who is an attorney, who knows the system, they'll put anybody on there who is willing to corrupt themselves just to keep that job and to be told what to do. So you get these wackos on there with no experience whatsoever, and when a case comes before them, they don't have the slightest idea how to rule. So they'll call up, whoever on the GOP they're supposed to contact and say, "How am I supposed to vote on this one, George?" And George says, "Oh, we're against it." So you have people who don't even think or reason; they will just follow orders, and that's really scary.
I'm just wondering why you looked at me directly when you said wacko.
Because you're sitting in the wrong place.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, it's a little reminiscent. The documentary that I mentioned before, The Revisionaries, the Texas School Board, an expert, right? The criteria for an expert is that 3 school board members vote that you're an expert.
Oof.
So it's kind of like what Nancy's talking about, right? The idea that you don't have to have a degree in this. No. You don't have to have experience in this. You don't have. They literally could say that anybody is an expert, and they threw down David Barton as an expert, who literally has no degree and no training, and he just is a Christian dominionist who writes books saying we're a Christian nation.
Yeah,
that's his claim to expertise. Yeah. And he promotes a site called Wall Builders that is just a site for Christian dominionism. But this. this is scary times. And there's a whole lot to unpack, I guess, with all of it, and with the politics and the religion mixing like it has been. Unfortunately, that may, in some cases, I guess, there could be times when that's going to be within the scope of what Ethan is working on, and sometimes it won't be, right? I mean, but corruption, I think, Ethan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I felt like we could demonstrate, for example, something was an inappropriate combination of religion and politics, that we would be happy to do so.
Yeah. Any story that would have anything to do with any religious influence, and it, whether it, like, I don't know, just any religious story that wasn't necessarily brought to light, we are interested in bringing it to light, whether it shows corruption, or in some cases we have published some stories and documents that paint various religious institutions in a good light, and that, right? But if we were to get a story or a tip of some religious institution or religious individual or something influencing politics, whether for better or for worse, absolutely we would publish that.
So when you guys do Truth and Transparency, do you guys just solely focus on the U.S. or you guys go international?
Oh, we definitely go international.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll publish anything.
Send it our way. Send it to Ethan.
Yeah,
you guys,
for sure.
You guys got a pretty good following at this point?
Yeah, so the majority of our following is within the Mormon and Jehovah's Witnesses community. And when I say Jehovah's Witness community, I mean the ex-Jehovah's Witness, because they're much more insular than the Mormon community. But and then I mean, we do have a good amount of followers within the atheist and secular communities. We were at AACon last year, meeting people and whatnot. So yeah, we have a decent following. But we're ready to. Up until now, we've been doing this for 3 years now. We launched in December of 2016, and up until now, it's largely just been Ryan and myself, right? We've had some volunteers that we consult with and help us out and whatnot, but we are now trying to ramp this up, and exactly what Tracie was just saying about the religious influence in politics in the U.S. and just the U.S. in general. I do think that over time things are going to get better as younger generations come up, but we need to expose the corruption that's going on behind the scenes now, so that when that time does come, we can fix it, right? And I think that speaks really well to our strengths. That's why an organization like us exists, is to expose stuff like this and to hopefully make, without sounding too idealistic, make the world a better place, I guess,
Yeah, absolutely. And we certainly encourage you guys to do that. It's interesting that the U.S., like Tracie was saying a bit earlier, there's been a decline in religiosity in the U.S. going for a little while now. But the U.S. is still in the G7 and the G8, the most religious country aside Turkey. Which is, sometimes we look at you guys and we think you guys are like two steps from being a theocracy. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. But yet, it seems the Christians, for lack of a better term, have outplayed us. They really have. They've put themselves into a position, although they're declining, they're still holding all the reins of power. Do you feel that maybe, as a message for the listeners out there, that maybe it's time for atheists to be a bit less apatheist? Sometimes the term I use.
Yes, but I also with a little bit of a caveat. I personally am not a fan of militant atheism, and I steer away from labeling myself as an atheist solely because of the reputation that the atheist community has. I prefer the label of secular Mormon. That said, I do think, yes, the secular community, it is time to stand up for the separation of church and state a little bit more. I do think that atheists deserve as a seat at the table as much as anybody else. Yeah, go ahead, Tracie.
Oh, it just puts me in mind. So I'm attending a UU church now. And one of the things they have is like broad embracement of multi-faith, right? Or no faith. Like they aren't interested in what you believe religiously. And their practice is just about doing good, doing charitable work, doing supportive work, protecting the marginalized, protecting the downtrodden. I mean, that's what they do. And when I went there, the first thing I noticed before I even went inside the building was their Black Lives Matter banner and their rainbow banner that were both outside. And I remember thinking, anyone can hang a banner, but what's happening in there, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I want to know, is what are you actually doing, not what are you showing? And so when I went in, I found out that they had a lot of, subgroups that were focused on different work efforts around the community. And one of the things I really liked is that they are offering their building as sanctuary. So they actually have people living in that building who, if they stepped out, could be grabbed by ICE and deported. And they have a sign on the door that ICE is not welcome, that this is a sanctuary, that they are claiming sanctuary as a church to protect these people. And I look at that and I say, I think for myself, when I think about what I want the country to be, my mind is way more broad than atheist, right? I mean, I'm thinking in terms of, I don't care what you believe. If you're willing to help me help that person, that's what matters to me.
Yeah, humanist.
100%.
Yeah, or just, just plain old compassionate, I mean, just the idea that you will not let somebody go back to a dangerous situation because that's just not morally correct.
Yeah,
and I need to be surrounded by people that share those goals. And I think that what I like about the UU is this idea that you can have all of these people with all these different faith traditions behind them, and none of them think their faith tradition should be what is navigating what we're doing. Like, all of them are just like, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and
behaviors
we can work together.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me?
I said behavior. I didn't mean to step all over you, but it's just behavior. Behavior is more important than belief. And I was a member of UU for a long time.
You
and
mean
really
Universal U-Haul?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and I was very comfortable there, and for many years, and raised my children, as Unitarian Universalists. So, and they've always been at the forefront of doing the right thing, the compassionate thing, the kind thing for humanity. Not because they're doing it because you're Christian or you're Jewish or you're whatever, but because you're a human being and deserve to be treated equally. Yeah.
I also hear
100%.
I also hear they have padded pews. Way better than the old Catholic ones.
Yeah, it's very comfortable. Yeah. No, but the reality is, I've met some atheists that I wouldn't want to live in their America.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Tracie, Ethan, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I really appreciate that. But the mic is all yours. Go ahead, be shameless, promote yourself. If people want to find out more about what you guys are doing there, where can they find you?
Yeah, head over to truthandtransparency.org. You'll see that we are in the middle of a fundraising push. Essentially, if we don't get a certain amount of money pretty soon, I don't know how much longer we're going to last here. So if donate what you can. We would super appreciate it. We are sitting on dozens of stories and thousands of documents. I'm not exaggerating when I say that, but we can't publish until we get a little bit more funding so that we could get some media insurance to protect us from frivolous lawsuits. So, so yeah, please help support us. Sign up for our newsletter if you're there. Share us on Facebook, social media, and thank you so much.
Do you guys have a Patreon page by any chance?
Patreon page? No, we do not. But we have a Patreon like our donation page right now has levels of membership that you could purchase, and we're in exchange for some swag and whatnot.
Fantastic. And Tracie, where can people find you?
I'm not actually doing too much in the secular community except working with Ethan on this project. I do have a little blog that I'm doing that's called At Home in My Head that's hosted on WordPress, but it's mostly personal stuff. So if somebody's interested in just sort of, what's going on there, that's fine. They're welcome to come and just hang out, but it won't be like the Atheist Tracie, so I don't want anybody to be disappointed. It's mostly just personal and for fun.
Perfect.
That's the best kind.
Okay.
Before I let you guys go, I gotta have you say, hi, this is Ethan and Tracie, and we took a left in the valley.
Hi, this is Ethan and Tracie, right? And we took a left at the valley. Ethan, you got to say it with me. Ready?
Oh, yeah, that's...
1, 2, 3. Hi.
Hi, this is Ethan and
Tracie. I'm going to say, you say Ethan when I stop. Hi, this is...
Okay. Try this again. Okay.
This is good.
Hi, this is... Say Ethan.
I'm sorry. Okay, let's go on 3. You count to 3, and then I'll be ready. Here we go.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hi, this is
Ethan and
Tracie, and we took a left at the valley.
Fantastic.
You have just become the best of any of the messages, that we've recorded.
I think you need to run that whole outro. Like, don't edit.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, we will.
Yeah, you've risen to the top like cream. Thank you.
And that was the amazing Tracie Harris and Ethan Dodge.
Yeah, they're exceptionally good, aren't they?
They are pushing a great cause, and I highly recommend you support them. You go there and go follow the site. We'll put the links in the show notes, and go in there and make a donation if you can. I mean, this is a worldwide worthwhile effort.
Well, most of the good these days are coming not from our institutions, but from investigative journalists who are exposing rot and corruption, because so many people believe what they read on Twitter or on the social media, and they don't have any way to really understand the politics behind things, the corruption, the power, the greed, and it's through Tracie and Ethan and people like them that they get to know what's really going on, and if they can accept that as the truth, which it is, that's more powerful than anything else that's happening nowadays. So they've got to be encouraged.
Absolutely,
and followed.
I know that a lot of theists are stuck supporting their faith and their church often as an emotional response, but that doesn't mean that we should not expose the data and the facts behind what actually goes on.
Well, if your religion is real, you'd want that exposed. You wouldn't want that tainting your belief, would you?
And what made me become an atheist was the realization of the hypocrisy of the church I was going to, the Catholic Church and all that. So why, if it worked for me, it could certainly work for others, and it just needs to be done, because it's just, even if it, not for building atheists, but because it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show, and appreciate that, and thank you for the Tracie Harris and Ethan Dodge for joining us. You can follow us at leftatthevalley.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at LETV Podcast, send us an email at leftattvalley@outlook.com. You can become a patron. Go to Patreon/LETV and help us grow the show. Give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show as well. Perfect. Coming up. What are we going to come out with, Nancy? Next week.
I don't know. Somebody interesting, I know.
That's right. We'll be talking to Randolph Richardson. He's the head of Canadian Atheists.
Oh.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking to Janice Selby. Remember we had a show a couple weeks ago with Dr. Del Rey about religious trauma?
Sure.
She's also into that. She's the one that kind of helped do the whole conference. We'll have Jason Henderfield from Sensibly Speaking, and we'll also have Chris Shelton talking about Scientology.
A lot of interesting topics from people who we don't know that well, but we'll get to know who they are, what their causes are, and learn something new. Fabulous.
We'll have some great things coming on the pipe as per usual.
You bet.
A new decade. A new decade that started on the right foot, I hope.
A new decade, a new studio, a new cat on my lap. The life is good.
Yes, and the dog is on my foot snoring. Oh, God. Poodle. You kill me. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
History denies evolution, hates science, promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance.
All right, so I'm going to join on a different system. So let me log out of here, and then I'm going to join a different system.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, now that she's gone, we can bash her.
I'm trying to be gone. How do I get gone? I'm just gonna close Skype on here.
Apparently,
and then now you can start bashing.
Apparently, we're just not good enough for her. She needs a different computer.
Oh, that woman's gonna come back with a vengeance now.
Why? I wouldn't want to mess with Tracie. She's way smarter than me, so I'm not gonna mess with her.
We started out so nicely with Ethan, and now.
I say it's ignorance, and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. 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 I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. 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 Now let me take a sec. Don't mean it sounds so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful. Thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? Infect them? Fuck that. The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are blood-stained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean it sounds so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance, and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. 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 I'm an atheist. 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 I'm an atheist. 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 I'm an atheist. Atheist. Atheist.